Vice President Kamala Harris. So honored to be introducing the next President of the United Just a second. I am so honored to be introducing the next President of the United States of America, Vice President Kamala Harris.
So what?
In New Delhi, a team of medical experts are redefining a technique designed to save thousands of babies' lives. It's called immediate kangaroo mother care. Wait, did you just say kangaroo?
Inspired by kangaroos who keep their babies in the pouch, immediate kangaroo mother care is basically skin to skin contact of the baby starting soon after birth and continuing even if the baby is sick.
Doctors tested IKMC on preterm babies by placing them on their mothers immediately after birth.
We found up to
It's a baby every 3 minutes.
It is immensely satisfying to think the research you have done would help save even a few lives, in this case, millions. That is what keeps you going.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, partners of human potential.
Was that a horror movie? I don't think so.
After going on a date, right? Okay, so I just got into my car after going on a date, right? And let me just tell you something. I don't know what the deal is with like men now, but I had told him prior that I will be having pre and post date expenses, and is that okay, and are you going to cover them? And I don't know if he wasn't listening or like what the deal was or whatever, but when I handed him the white envelope, he looked shocked, and then he opened it and it's receipts. Hello, pre post date expenses. Hello, like what kind of females do you be dating? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so I handed it to him and he literally looked shocked at me and said, I can't cover this. It was $478 for pre and post date expenses. You asked me on a date, and mind you, we really didn't even have that good a conversation because he was on his phone the whole time, and I have a very strict no phone policy on dates. Hello, you're here to pay attention to me. Look at all are you fucking kidding? Okay, so I just got into my car after going on a date, right? And let me just tell you something. I don't know what the deal is with like men.
Summit. Let's go. How do you guys feel? Let's go.
The masses, please welcome Randy Hipper. I do not have the mic.
We got to put the technologies down for a second. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Litecoin Summit. Let's go. How do you guys feel? Let's go. Let's go. I see you guys sitting. We could enjoy the energy in here right now. It's great to see every single one of you guys. This energy in the room is electric. And guys, we gotta talk about something right now. We gotta talk about growing up. Because growing up is hard. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of things, especially in this day and age, that we're faced with. And one thing you have to know about growing up is that it requires energy, putting in that work. And we know that quite well. Especially, you could look back at someone who did that and executed it quite perfectly, creating the best money there is. Satoshi Nakamoto, back in 2008 to 2009, just birthed a baby called Bitcoin. And it changed the world forever. Looking at the white paper, just knowing that you could send a transaction, send multiple intermediaries 24/7, 365, it's not discriminatory. And that is something that is super special, especially the fact that it progressed at a rapid pace with people believing in it. And especially with that energy put in, obviously proof of work, putting in that energy to power those computers in order to create more Bitcoin and then spread that Bitcoin across the world. We could fast forward a few years to 2011. Litecoin was another creation with another man putting in that work, Charlie Lee, the man, this is why we're here today. And then we could fast forward to 2016, where sometimes this energy that we feel, especially in crypto, can make you crazy or make other people think you're crazy. And I had that experience firsthand, and I thought my dad was crazy. Back in 2016, I was only 13 years old. I was an ignorant little child. I was out here hearing my dad talk about this Bitcoin because he heard this guy that was a truck driver named Bitcoin Ben on Facebook talking about this Bitcoin. My dad thought this was like a physical coin. And it's kind of cool. We have those physical coins here today. Ballet Wallet, they have a full Litecoin on a physical coin. Go check that out. I was like, what is this Bitcoin thing that he's talking about? I thought he was absolutely insane. He was on the internet, talking to people on the internet, and then going to meet these internet people in real life, which most of them are here today, and now they're my family, where I thought this is never something I'll even look into. Bitcoin, numbers, math, adulting. Nah, I couldn't do that. I thought you had to be like some millionaire to buy Bitcoin or invest in stocks. You had to go to school for that stuff. You're nuts, dude. By the time I was 16 in 2019, my dad's coming home from this thing called Litecoin Summit. And I was like, this man just left me and my sister alone at a relative's house to go meet people on the internet to talk about internet money? Okay, I guess I gotta take a second. I gotta listen a little bit closer. And we did something magical, a transaction. And I saw how easy it was. You copy a QR code, you copy and paste an address or a username, and you could transact with anyone, no matter where they are in the world, basically instantly. And wait, hold on. You own this thing. There's a digital wallet, just like there's the Venmos, the PayPals, but except this is a different currency. A one with 21 million, a cap supply, where I realized that my few $100s in the bank account is not going well. And this was pre-COVID. This was pre-massive inflation, money printer going everywhere. So I was looking at my few $100s in my bank account. I was taught growing up, keep your money in the bank. That's where it's safe. And you know what? You'll earn this interest thing where you keep your money in there and it'll just give you more money. Oh, well, that was too good to be true, wasn't it? Because my few $100 was still few $100, and the value was actually going down. That I couldn't buy as much as I could even 5 years before that. And you can ask my dad how much burgers at McDonald's were and how easy it was to really get away with having a single dollar. It took you so far. You could get a whole week's worth of lunch at school for that. Now we go into the store, what are you buying for $1? You're lucky you can find an Arizona iced tea under $1 still. So I was just kind of sitting there, wondering, how do I make this move? So obviously I was too young to be on an exchange yet. I was pre-18. So I was like, you know what? We're going to do a transaction, Dad. I'm going to give you my money. You're going to give me some cryptocurrency. And I thought that this was the best way to not only have an investment, but it wasn't really an investment to me. It was freedom, because I'm able to be my own bank. And you could say Bitcoin was boring at the time. What was going on? Transactions, money going back and forth. There was nothing really going on in 2016, 2019. Of course, you had the 2017 ICO phase that was way above my head at the time. But what was really important was those fundamentals to me. The fact that no one can take this money away from me when I've always been taught the opposite. let somebody have that control over you. Let somebody take that power away from you. And it is power that they're taking. Because to the fundamentals of America almost, we the people. We have these inalienable natural human rights of life, liberty, and property. That's what this country was founded on. But I also know that it's not just this country that needs to embrace that, because I feel like even now we're losing it. It needs to be the entire world. I realized that I had to go to school, had to go to my family and tell them about this revolutionary thing called Bitcoin. Had to tell them about Litecoin too, because it was fast, it was cheap, it was easy. And it was obviously everywhere where Bitcoin was listed. These two assets drove me insane because I went to school, nobody knew about it. I went to my family, they're like, no, this is not what you should be into. So I was like, whatever. I was a major nerd in high school. My overall average for all 4 years was a 97. So I was a nerd. I was tutoring, I was into physics, I was into math, I was a year ahead in math, I was, taking psychology, and I thought about the psychology of people. I love psychology because it really makes you wonder how people work. And I wondered, how does that psychology come into crypto? Because we have this major idea of, again, self-sovereignty. Then I learned about technical analysis. You look at the charts. There's red, there's green. And that tells you what people are thinking. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they panicking? Or are they sending this thing to the moon and beyond? I knew I had to play some sort of role. I didn't care what it was, whether just transacting, tweeting, something. I had to do something with myself. And I asked my friends. Like I said, I was a complete nerd, getting picked on by all these people that were like, she's just a nerd in the corner, let her do my homework or something. And I just decided, you know what, if I'm already weird, if I'm already a nerd, I'll become a super nerd. So I decided one day to create something. And it took me a while. I went to my family and I said, man, crypto is so beautiful, and we need to do something about this. But I didn't know what to do. And then I was following all the beautiful Litecoin family on X, on my high school X account, and I realized that maybe I want to be part of the community for real. It was lockdown, April 2020. I was 17, a junior in high school, supposed to be planning going to college. So I was applying, I got in, I got some scholarships, but it started not to mean anything to me because I realized that the system was broken. And that's why I really got pushed to create my account. So like I said, I was 17. I was at a park, April 2020. Everybody was so sad. And I missed going into school and saying good morning to everybody, bringing them some fresh baked cookies. And I decided, you know what? I'm just gonna go on X and create this account called Miss Teen Crypto. Girl, teenager, crypto. All right, we got the point. I saw that it was digital real estate. And we kind of go over this with guests here like Theo, where digital domains, okay, Instagram, X, Snap, I tweeted, and I was like, hello world, I'm here, let's spread adoption. And people were like, oh my God, there's a girl and she's a teenager, what is going on here? No, you guys know they were shook. And here to just spread adoption, can we be friends? And I made some friends. And I realized that I could make friends. Because in high school, like I said, I was a nerd. I was just in the corner somewhere. And I wasn't in the corner in crypto. I was a part of a family. And I realized that quite quick, especially with the Litecoin Foundation, all the Litecoiners that are here today that really encouraged me to keep going. When I first got on, there was some stigma, oh my gosh, but they pushed me through. And that was everything to me. So I went to my friends. I went in school over that summer, and people were a little salty, like the ocean. They were not happy. Family was not happy. I went into high school, so it was April I created the account, and they were not happy. I was, going into school. I had teachers coming up to me saying, Randy, are you doing this Miss Teen Crypto thing? Is that your account? I was like, yeah. Oh, Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme. You shouldn't be doing that. Bitcoin's too dangerous. You shouldn't be doing that. You should actually delete your account. Yes, that was said to me. The audacity. I then went to my family and I said, guys, we're on the brink of madness here. It was 2020. I said, the banks are going to fail. I said, the system is broken. Inflation is taking over. 40 to 50% of our money supply was printed between 2020 and 2021. Obviously, who's going to pay the consequences for that? It's not going to be the 1%. It's going to be you and I. They thought I was crazy. They were like, nope, you shouldn't be doing crypto. You should not be doing this. And I said, I'm going to keep doing that because I have my dad and my sister behind me, and I have the community behind me. Who else do I need? And that was the most important thing. I realized that being kind of set apart from everybody else was a good thing, because I had, toward the end of my senior year, obviously the account was doing quite well, and I was getting published in things like the New York Times, Business Insider, so it was starting to catch the attention of my principal. He came up to me, he's like, this is your thing? And I said, yeah. And he was like, oh, Bitcoin's a little bit weird. I was like, okay, that's fine. So then I went in the hallway, I was walking around, and I saw that my guidance counselor came up to me. He's like, Randy, can I talk to you? Yeah, sure. What's up, dude? Everyone's talking about you. Teachers, students. I'm like, what's wrong? Like, I'm good. He's like, they're scared. I was like, why are they scared? I was like, they just don't understand. And he was like, you know what? That's the reason why you have potential to make it. And that one person believing in me like that is in a building where hundreds of people didn't, lit that fire under me even more. I was supposed to go to college after I graduated high school, and I realized that Miss Teen Crypto was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change the world. And I said, you know what? I have my dad, I have my sister, I have my community. They understand me. And Bitcoin's not going anywhere. And soon enough, everybody else will understand as well. Soon that started to become a reality, because then we had 2020 Uniswap coming out. All these grocery store tokens, the pickles, and all these, the cakes and all these things coming out. I was like, okay, guys, this is getting a little bit rambunctious. Then we had NFTs come out. Oh my gosh, digital collectibles, where we could actually own it too. I started minting NFTs in 2020, give you the opportunity to be your own bank. But NFTs and now ordinals give you the opportunity to be your own art gallery, your own record label, where we do not need people to give us permission to share our energy, our value, our information. There was no permission there. I was so empowered. I started minting those NFTs like they were hotcakes. I kept going and realized that gaming is a thing in Web3. That this is also going to be a catalyst for mainstream adoption. That everyday people like you and I are the ones that get to influence the world. That, like I said, this is a revolution. We see now that, all of a sudden we have the permission of BlackRock and all these individuals that said that Bitcoin was bad. Why would you buy Bitcoin? The biggest bankers in the world telling you not to buy this stuff. That's when you make the opposite thing and see how it works out. Because sometimes not everybody's going to understand you. Not everybody is going to embrace an idea that they've been taught their whole lives the opposite. And that's kind of what we have to realize throughout growing up in crypto, that we're all growing up in crypto. This technology is still so early. I believe more than 90% of the world has not touched cryptocurrency yet. And that is a dramatic number, because look at where Bitcoin's at now. Over $60,000. When I was talking about things in high school, Bitcoin crypto, it was $7,000. And all the people that told me that it would not work, they came running back and said, hey, maybe this thing is interesting. Especially my former principal came to me when the year after I graduated, I was back at my former high school teaching investing classes about Bitcoin. So less than a year later, we saw how much of a change that can happen. There's going to be so much more of this. Right now, we're dealing with payments. We're still trying to make that part mainstream. But what about all the utility tokens? What about all these NFTs? What about all the games, the ordinals? This is such a bright and beautiful space that is changing lives everywhere. There's nobody that can stop us. And that's what people have to realize. That people our entire lives, again, have been taught to ask for permission to bow down to somebody else when we don't have to do that anymore. It's about you. It's about your decisions. It's about making yourself happy and influencing the change in the world. Because we know with fiat funds all of these horrible things that go on in the world. And why is that? Because we allow it to have value. We allow these people to control our lives using this currency. And the unfortunate thing is that most people on the street, if you ask them what inflation is, if you ask them what Bitcoin is, they still don't know. But you know what? It's not that unfortunate because it provides so much room for us to grow. The fact that Bitcoin is 60 grand right now, and such a small part of the global population is part of it, that should make you even more bullish. That should make you want to ape into the technology. I'm not telling you guys, buy Bitcoin, send it to the moon, because honestly, it's not about the finance. If you go to the airport and you're swapping your US dollars for euros, are you concerned about the price fluctuation? Oh my gosh, the euro has gone up 5% this week. I'm gonna make some gains on my, no, that's not how it works. You just exchange one currency for the other because you need it, because you want it, because you're valuing that other item more than the item you had before. We're going to see so much more of that, especially at a point where people all over the world are experiencing something called hyperinflation. They're getting robbed of their everyday life. They're being devalued in every which way possible, where an average family, the American dream, is slowly dying because as a Gen Z, how much of us Gen Z are going to be able to own a home? How can we afford a home when just the prices keep getting higher and the wages keep getting lower or staying the same? This is why we need Bitcoin. We need something that's finite, something that nobody can change, something that you're empowered by, something that you own. It's so important that we realize that this is something we have to spread throughout the world. And I'm not telling you guys to go bananas like me and talk to strangers on the streets. I'm not telling you to do that. But I am telling you to be part of the revolution. Simply by owning cryptocurrency and putting it in your wallet, that's a sign of resilience. That's a sign of you saying that I am ready to take that responsibility. I don't need anybody else. And other people are going to realize that self-custody and Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, maintaining your value is a necessity. What about those people out of the 5 bank failures last year? The people standing outside SVB and all of these banks wondering if they were going to get their money. They were lining up outside like it was Black Friday at Best Buy trying to get a new flat screen TV, except they were just hoping that they could feed their family that weekend. They went on their magical bank app and they're like, it says there's money on here, but oh, I can't do anything with that because my bank is so messed up and they failed on me. You never want to be one of those people in line hoping that you can feed your family. And you also don't want to be the guy that has all this money under his mattress because you're posing a physical risk to yourself. Versus Bitcoin and crypto where you're maintaining your value, nobody can take it from you, and you don't have to worry about a bank telling you that you have your money and that you can survive. It's all about survival. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're on that list. It's literally a part of your day list. Okay, I have my Bitcoin. I have my certain things that are going to keep me safe. And Bitcoin is that safety. Bitcoin is growing. Only 15 years old, Litecoin, Bitcoin, they're just teenagers. We know what we were like when we were teenagers, just figuring out life. And Bitcoin and Litecoin and cryptocurrency, DeFi, now Politify, is figuring its way through the world of technology, the revolution we're a part of. So if there's anything I have to say to you guys today, is never give up. That this is something that you are in control of, that now the people are empowered by. And when we fix the money, we're Randy Hipper at Miss Teen Crypto. Have a great day.
I don't need the mic, thank you. No, I'm good.
Excuse me, Mr. Marty.
I know, great job. Probably should have opened with her. Get the energy up.
Educating people about cryptocurrency. So it's the third year I've had her back to teach us about cryptocurrencies. So Randy, this is a decent crew.
Just decent.
There are some smart kids in here, so we want to know. We want to know about Bitcoin and other crypto.
All right. All right, I guess we could get into it. It's nice to meet you guys. My name is Randy Hipper, also known as Miss Teen Crypto. I'm 21 now. I started this when I was 17, a junior in Severian, and let's get after it, and let's go Doge to the moon! Let's get after it, and let's go Doge to the moon!
What's y'all's type?
Tall. Anyone who isn't white. No white men.
Like, I just like darker skin.
Yeah.
Okay. Like,
Tall, not white.
What?
Like, you guys, handsome as
What's the next one? One more.
what's y'all's type?
tall. Anyone who isn't white. No white men.
Like, I just like darker skin.
Yeah.
Okay. Like,
Tall, not white.
What?
Like, you guys, handsome as
What's the next one? One more.
what's y'all's type?
tall. Anyone who is
Violencia es pretender desconocer la soberanía popular que ya decidió el pasado domingo. No crean que nadie va a aceptar ahora, no crean que vienen a ajustar o a cambiar actas. Las actas originales oficiales ya las conocemos y el mundo entero las ha visto. Así que, desde aquí, rezamos al Consejo Nacional Electoral a que integre las actas de una vez.
Yeah, I'm back with a vengeance, and I'm in it to win it. I'm going Popeye up in here, I muscle up on. It's beast mode time, so go hard or go home. I'm a beast. Yeah, I got it on my mind. See, I came here to shine, so let's get it on the grind. Yeah, I'm back with a vengeance, and I'm in it to win it. I'm going Popeye up in here, I muscle up on. It's beast mode time, so go hard or go home. I'm a beast. Yeah, I got it on my mind. See, I came.
If a government in the CIA, we didn't give a hoot about democracy. I mean, it was fine. If it didn't, then democracy didn't mean a thing to us. And I don't think it means a thing today. In the CIA, we didn't give a hoot about
totalitarian tiptoe. It's another perceptual mind manipulation technique. And that works like this. You are at A, and you know that your agenda is going to take the world to Z. But you know if you go from A to Z in too big a leap, the changes in society are going to be so fundamental that many people are going to look up from the game show and the sport, and they're going to say, what's going on? Ethel, what's going on here? Look what they're doing. So you don't go in big leaps. You use the totalitarian tiptoe. You go as fast as you can, but not so fast that people start to see the pattern and realize that it's all connected. So you'll go from A to B, and maybe go to D if you can get away with it, and so on. But all the time, you're moving towards this Z goal, which is total human control. And I have this phrase that I use: know the outcome and you'll see the journey. This is why it's crucial to uncover what the agenda's outcomes are planned to be. Because once you know that, you can see the stepping stones, the totalitarian tiptoe to those outcomes. If you don't know what the outcomes are planned to be, then all these events just appear random. Oh, something else has happened. Oh, that's happened. Oh, now that's happened. But there's no connection apparently between the two. But if you know what the outcome is planned to be, know the outcome, and you'll see the journey, because you'll see that these events, through problem, reaction, solution, not least, are using the excuses to push us on to those outcomes.
When I first went to stunned. When I first went to Ecuador, I was stunned at how bad it was. Texaco was the exclusive operator in this area, and then Chevron ended up buying Texaco. And in a few short years, it was all wiped out and poisoned by this system of oil extraction that literally dumped on a daily basis 5 million gallons of toxic oil waste into rivers and streams. The water people drank was contaminated. The air they breathed was contaminated. The food they ate was contaminated.
My friend Steve Donziger is a brave environmental lawyer who took on Chevron on behalf of Amazonian communities in Ecuador with whom I also work. I talk a lot about corporate capture of our governmental agencies, which are transformed from guardians of the public interest into indentured servants of power and profit. Corporate capture has made inroads into our legal system too. Let me tell you about how we can do something about it.
I have always been motivated by a desire to use whatever advocacy or legal talents I have on behalf of those who are in trouble or who are, being unfairly attacked or mistreated. It's just what I like to do. In Ecuador, everyone relied on these natural water systems, rivers, streams, creeks, for their sustenance, for their water, for their bathing, for their fishing, for their food. Texaco basically gouged these giant waste pits right out of the jungle floor with no lining and dumped all this oil waste, which is liquid and rock and all this toxic brew, into these unlined pits. Texaco built a system that was designed to pollute. Like, they actually put pipes in the sides of these pits to deliberately run them off into rivers and streams that indigenous people living in the area were getting their drinking water from. What I saw was far worse than I ever could have imagined. We filed a lawsuit. What lawyers tend to always think they can solve these problems through the law, and we filed a lawsuit in the U.S. courts. Texaco insisted the case be heard in Ecuador. We battled them for 10 years. Yeah.
Let me just emphasize this. You didn't want to move to the Ecuador courts.
Right.
Chevron wanted to move to the Ecuador courts because they thought that Ecuador would be more pliable and more susceptible to the influence of big oil companies.
They thought they could engineer a dismissal of the case through politics.
And you fought it for 10 years, but then they got their way.
Yeah.
So they moved to Ecuador. So tell what happens next.
So we started, the case down there started in 2001. In 2011, we won a landmark judgment against them. We won the case.
In Ecuador.
In Ecuador, where they wanted the case to be held. And at that point, I'll never forget it, their general counsel says, he basically says, we're going to fight the indigenous peoples until hell freezes over, and then we're going to fight it out on the ice. He said that, Charles James. And they vowed never to pay a penny. And
what was the judgment from the court in Ecuador?
It was initially $19 billion, but on appeal it was cut in half. It ended up being $9.5 billion plus with fees and awards. It was like $10 billion. It's now higher because of interest. Now that might sound like a lot of money, but just by way of comparison, BP has already paid out $70 billion for harm caused by the Deepwater Horizon spill in the Gulf of Mexico. And given that this was the most sustained assault in the most beautiful environment for decade after decade, it's now gone on for 50 years, it's actually a modest amount of money when you look at the magnitude of the damage, and you also understand that Chevron has revenues of approximately $250 billion a year. So we got this judgment.
And this, by the way, this area is some of the most pristine rainforests in the world prior to Texaco's invasion.
Yeah.
It has some of the highest species diversity on Earth. It has indigenous people, including indigenous people who are uncontacted.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
I've never seen white people before.
I mean, we talked to people, some of the indigenous leaders who would confront the Texaco engineers, like in the 1970s and 80s, and they were installing the system.
And they would say, what's up with this oil running in our streams and rivers? And the engineers would mock them and basically say, oil is like vitamins. It's like milk. Just you can drink it. It doesn't harm you. And there was an intense amount of racism. To this day, they're still suffering tremendously. But the bottom line is the communities, the indigenous groups you were working with, and the farmer communities, the colonists, all united in one class action lawsuit and won this resounding victory affirmed by Ecuador's Supreme Court on appeal in the very country where Chevron insisted that the trial be held. But rather than pay the judgment, Chevron then went after me in this incredible corporate retaliation campaign.
And explain how they went after you.
Okay. So the first thing they did was to try to criminalize me personally. Like, we're going to flip the script and make this guy into the biggest villain. And they paid a fancy law firm literally hundreds of millions of dollars in fees. They had 150 lawyers working on this to target me and some of my colleagues. And they filed this lawsuit and they designed it to read like a criminal indictment. I mean, the way they wrote it up. And the judge, who was very pro-corporate, has financial ties to Chevron, accepted the case. And I ended up in a...
What judge?
Lou Kaplan.
He's a New York federal judge.
He's a New York federal judge. This particular judge failed to disclose he had investments in Chevron when they were litigating, those lawsuits back in the 70s and 80s. And he basically worked with Chevron's lawyers to try to destroy me as a way of avoiding payment. That guy, and get him off the case, the people down there will be left defenseless. So the first thing they did is they sued me for the most amount of money any person in this country has ever been sued for, $60 billion. And their goal was to intimidate me and to force me to basically quit. Because what lawyer in their right mind, according to their calculations, would hang in there when he or she is facing total financial ruin, okay? But we kept going, and basically we called their bluff because on the eve of trial, they dropped every penny of those damages to avoid a jury. Because if you don't sue for money in a civil case, the defendant doesn't get a jury. So when we were about to go try the case, they suddenly dropped all the damages claims. So at that point, there was what I would describe as a show trial. They brought in witnesses, they paid, and the judge was making a whole series of evidentiary rulings. Like, for example, he barred the use of the word pollution during the trial. I was not allowed to talk about pollution in Ecuador during the entire trial. He said, if you talk about pollution in Ecuador, I'm going to hold you in contempt of court. But the whole case is about pollution in Ecuador. So I learned firsthand how the legal system can be manipulated by a corporation for its own private purposes to destroy a human rights lawyer, that's me, as a way to evade paying some of the most vulnerable communities on the planet that the company poisons. I kept going with my clients in Ecuador to sue Chevron and other countries like Canada, and then we sued them in Brazil to collect on their assets. When we won that decision, they decided to come after me again. Chevron did through this judge, and they went to him and asked him to impose millions of dollars of court costs on me to reimburse them for their legal fees that they had used to attack me. And when I couldn't, as a human rights lawyer, I was never a person of great means. When I could not pay these fines, they asked the judge to order me to turn over my computer to them so they could examine where my money might be. And I was basically broke at this point. And I told the judge, hold me in civil contempt. I'm appealing your order. Would violate attorney-client privilege, put the lives of my clients in Ecuador at great risk. And I just can't do it. I mean, they were trying to get me to violate my ethical duties to the people who I was representing in Ecuador. So the judge held me in civil contempt. I appealed this crazy order. And while that appeal was pending, he held me in criminal contempt of court. He took his charges to the U.S. attorney in New York City to prosecute me. That the U.S. attorney refused to prosecute me, rejected the charges, and then the judge did something that I've never heard of, and frankly, I'm embarrassed about for our whole country. He appointed a private corporate law firm to prosecute me in the name of the U.S. government.
I didn't know you could do that.
I didn't know you could either till it happened. Actually, you can't do that, but he did it anyway because it's illegal. And the crazy part is I learned 6 months later, the judge never disclosed that the law firm, the name of the law firm is Seward and Kissel. It's a small kind of oil and gas law firm. They had Chevron as a client. I was essentially being prosecuted directly by Chevron in the name of the U.S. government. And the first thing they did on a misdemeanor is something that has not happened to one lawyer in our history. They locked me up pre-trial on a misdemeanor contempt that was bogus to begin with. They slapped an ankle bracelet on my leg. I live in Manhattan in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had to go home, and I could not leave my home except for like legal meetings and stuff for 2 years and 2 months. When the maximum sentence was only 6 months had I been convicted. And what worries me as a advocate, someone who speaks out against injustice like you do, is this is a playbook that I believe the oil and gas industry in particular, but also other industries like the pharmaceutical industry, will use against those who are a little too successful in holding them accountable for their wrongdoing. By the way, the pollution down there, when you were there in the 80s, it was bad. It's now called by experts the Amazon Chernobyl. It's considered probably the worst pollution in the world right now. And it's been sitting out there in this isolated part of the world for decades. Very few people know about it. And while I'm telling you my story, okay, because this is very personal to me and my family, okay, it's been really hard. I just want to say that the people of Ecuador, many of them have died. I would say thousands have died. We don't know the exact number because Chevron will never fund a study to find out. But there have been so many people I've met over the 30 years I worked on this who have perished because of cancers and other diseases created by exposures to these toxins that they deliberately dumped out of pure greed into the rainforests that are still sitting out there decades after they started. It's embarrassing that our government allows this kind of thing to happen. And not only allows it to happen, I mean, we were litigating for years in Ecuador. The U.S. Embassy, okay, in Quito, was almost completely on the side of Chevron. They looked at the Ecuadorians who were trying to bring the case to clean up their ancestral lands as some sort of problem. So the U.S. government has become so, and I saw this with my own eyes, so pro-corporate with this kind of thing that it's very difficult for the government to be considered a neutral party anymore. And I know you had this experience with a lot of your work in the environmental field, with the vaccines and the pharmaceutical industry. In my experience, Chevron has so much control right now over this element of the judiciary that they literally are not paying a judgment they owe to 30,000 people who are at imminent risk of death because of the power they have over the U.S. government. And it's just not fair. And, they tried to shut me up. They tried to silence me. They thought I would go away. They're still trying to intimidate me. But the reality is I'm not shutting up because people need to know that this happens. And the only thing that's left to do from the Ecuadorian communities is to get a team of lawyers to go enforce the judgment against their assets in other countries. And I'll add that I can't leave this country. I've been a hostage in the United States for 5 years. I have not left the country for 5 years because Chevron had the judge confiscate my passport on the grounds that I hadn't turned my computer and confidential case file over to their lawyers. Even though I'm not detained anymore, and I spent 993 days detained, I'm not really free. I don't have the same rights as a typical American citizen. I don't have a passport. They took my law license without a hearing. They literally went into my bank accounts and wiped them out without even telling me. Suddenly you end up with all the resources you thought you could always count on for your future, for the future of your son, your family. They just went away. I mean, they went away overnight. And the reality is they could lock me up any day they want. All they have to do is go back to the judge and say he still hasn't turned over his computer. Why don't you charge him with a new criminal contempt? So I live, with this sort of situation that's almost unfathomable for a country like the United States of America.
You mentioned the U.S. Embassy being on the side of U.S. corporations rather than the side of democracy or justice or public health or the high ideals of our country. And it reminded me of Allen Dulles, who was essentially the first head of the CIA. When Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran in 1954 tried to nationalize the properties of BP, British Petroleum in Texaco, to make sure that their country could be paid for the oil that was under, that God had put our oil under their ground somehow. He Dulles overthrew Mossadegh, the first democratically elected president in the 4,000-year-old history of Iran. And, you know, Texaco famously, for the first decades of its existence, flew a pirate flag, a skull and crossbones, a Jolly Roger, on its world headquarters instead of the American flag.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, you talk to people in the industry, and like they talk about Texaco, like it's really. I mean, they're all have
all
major
bad, but
problems.
Texaco
was just they actually like enjoyed being bad. And the crazy part is it's still going on. My little role in life for the last 30 years, my humble role with others has been to try to hold one company accountable for this awful disaster. And by the way, polluters need to pay for their pollution if we're going to deal with the climate issue, in my opinion. And we have been unable, because of the bias of the court, the rule of law, and pay the people to whom they owe money for poisoning their lands. And what does that say about us as a country? What does it say that our government, our embassy in this country, takes the side of the polluter rather than those who are victims of the pollution? It's a really sad commentary. And you know, people talk about the loss of U.S. power in the world, the loss of our influence. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that, but one is, and I would argue, our government consistently takes the side of corporations that harm people in other countries when it shouldn't.
I mean, ultimately, what happened in Ecuador is just a symptom of the corporate capture of all of the institutions of our democracy, the subversion of American democracy, not only the regulatory agencies, not only the Department of Energy, which is just a sock puppet for the oil industry and the utilities, et cetera, but also the judiciary. And I think that's what would surprise most Americans, because they think that's the
I think that's the bulwark against what we're talking about. But I would argue it's actually become co-opted by the same phenomenon at this point. I mean, the judiciary. People used to think, oh, look, at least we can rely on our courts. Based on my experience and some of the stuff you've experienced, I'm not so sure that's the case. And like the other thing is this silencing. I mean, I read your book and you talked about how, I don't know, a few years ago you were making like 200, 250 speeches a year and it just dried up. It's like credit to you for building this campaign because you have a voice. I tried to do the same thing. You just build these separate institutions and ways to sort of get your voice out there. But like the major media embrace it. Human rights lawyer locked up in America. I live in Manhattan. It's a 20-minute walk from the New York Times newsroom. Do you think any reporter from the New York Times covered me? They were doing stories on lawyers locked up in Turkey and Myanmar, Saudi Arabia. And I'm sitting right here and I'm like, you guys need to cover this. And they couldn't cover it. So
they get full page Texaco ads.
I know. Chevron's like one of their biggest advertisers.
What are you looking at the future?
I feel optimistic. I am going to keep fighting with my clients in Ecuador for a recovery. I'm taking on other human rights work, and I refuse to be silenced. The reality is the case against Chevron needs to be fought and finished. And we're hopefully going to get a team of lawyers and enough financing to be able to do that, so that people can get a cleanup. I mean, obviously, this has affected me greatly, but like Chevron tries to make it all about me. So I just want to remind people that when you hear my story, I am being attacked because we were successful. That's why they're attacking me. They don't want this model of lawyers from the United States working with indigenous leaders in the Amazon, financed by, donors who really care about the environment. They don't want that model. That model was too successful and it resulted in a $10 billion liability against Chevron. So they are trying to destroy not only me, but the model. I tell my clients, I'm like, they not only want to win the case, they want to kill off the idea that you can do this kind of case. And like what I'm really fighting for, and what I think my colleagues are fighting for in this case, is for the viability of the rule of law, the viability of people to exercise their legal rights, to take wrongdoers to court, to make them pay for the harm they caused. And that's why they're going after us so hard. I mean, it makes no rational sense. They could have settled this case. They have spent, we estimate, $3 billion. They've used 2,000 lawyers and 60 law firms to fight us. I mean, it's extraordinary. One way that people can help is to support my campaign for a pardon from President Biden. People in the United States should not be prosecuted privately by a corporation. I don't care what you think of my work, what people think of me as a person. I happen to think I'm a good person, but you can even have a bad opinion of me and be offended by the idea that a corporation can lock someone up in this country. So we're asking President Biden to pardon me, and we have the support of dozens of Nobel laureates and members of Congress and others. And we don't think this is a right-left issue. This is a rule of law issue. And actually, a lot of very conservative lawyers have approached me to support this pardon campaign because people are justifiably very offended by the idea that someone who has worked in human rights his whole life could end up in jail on a bogus contempt case prosecuted by the corporate adversary against which he won a landmark judgment. I mean, it's just unheard of. So we're pushing this, and we really want people to support it. And people can go. I have a website, by the way. It's freedonziger.com, and people can go there and sign our petition and support our campaign. Again, it's freedonziger.com.
Steve Donziger, thank you so much for your courage, for your perseverance, and for your commitment to the highest values of our country and of humanity.
I really, really appreciate it. Back. When I first went to Ecuador,